So the last time I responded to a Misha Petrov video, it was one of the most painful things I ever watched. Hopefully this time will be different, maybe?
So today we're going to be talking about the protests happening. People are tearing down the American flag and putting up the Palestinian flag, screaming about how they are Hamas, proudly associating themselves with a terrorist organization.
And sure enough, it's more of the same from Misha Petrov. Okay, strap in and hold on, as we're in for a wild ride.
The time here is also limited that you have at this Ivy League university. You have amazing academic resources, and that's how you're spending your time.
Not gonna lie, I was really hoping I'd respond to an old school YouTube anti-SJW making an awful video about these protests. Unfortunately, irate Alex shifted his content to covering petty YouTube drama. Zers keeps making videos about why men shouldn't take dating advice from women, and both Charming Man 93 and Undoomed have been inactive for months. The only Gamergate era anti-SJW/YouTube skeptic I saw make a video about this is Omegon, and other than him calling the protesters cowards for hiding their identities, even though he hides his identity behind a Cthulhu avatar. Misha also does this in her video, to be fair, but at least she has the gall to show her face on camera. His video is so dry and boring, I found myself falling asleep, which sadly means that another response to Misha Petrov will have to do.
They hate capitalism too. There's a bunch of overlap here with communism. If you've ever been to any of these universities, you will find a bunch of posters on the floor, join the fight.
There are perfectly valid reasons to hate capitalism, Misha. Namely, workers, who have no control over the means of their production, being exploited by their employers, and expected to work for the rest of their lives until they drop dead.
They're blaming capitalism here for the evil university that they're paying for some reason to attend, and this evil country that they're for some reason staying in.
Oh goody, the "if you hate capitalism, why insert item here" strawman so many right-wing capitalists use whenever they want to defend capitalism. To which many people on the left, me included, argue that we live in a capitalist system, and until a viable alternative comes along and replaces it, we have no choice but to participate in a capitalist system.
The American flag at Harvard University had been replaced with a Palestinian flag.
Now, that is interesting indeed. Why are students on college campuses protesting the American flag and raising the Palestinian flag? Could it be because the United States provides weapons and protection to Israel, the same apartheid state who's currently committing genocide at Gaza by bombing hospitals and universities, and the Palestinian flag is raised in solidarity with the Palestinian people in Gaza struggling to survive Israel's genocide, including women and children?
If you hate this country so much, leave!
Yes, if you hate a country so much, why stay in that country and continue to fight to fix the numerous problems that plague that country so that the quality of life for everyone can improve for the better, when you can just purchase a plane ticket to move to another country instead? Paul Joseph Watson made that same argument in 2016 after Trump won the election. It was a bad argument then, it's a bad argument now, 8 years later.
We have our own domestic issues. I am so sorry. We have a literal invasion at the border. People are dying because of all the drugs being smuggled in. I think we should be putting America
Oh god, the racist dog whistles are strong with this one. First off, maybe getting most of your information from Fox News isn't a good thing. Second, most of those people fleeing to the United States via the Mexican border are refugees coming from countries that have been destroyed because their democratically elected governments have been replaced by authoritarian dictatorships and US-backed military coups. You know, the United States of America, the same country Misha is asking us to put first. During the Cold War, they overthrew several countries in Latin America out of fear of communism, thus worsening economic conditions in those countries and creating the refugee crisis conservatives like Misha are whining about today.
You could be pro-Palestine, you could be pro-Israel, you can love Ukraine, be super gay or super straight or super whatever, but what unites the people is that we're Americans, and that's something to be proud of. It doesn't mean the country is perfect, but there has to be a sense of pride for one's country.
I didn't choose to be born American, so there's no real point in me being proud to be an American. Also, Misha's really underselling how bad the United States is. This is a country that had genocide of the indigenous peoples already living there, African slavery which continues to this day through our prison system, which is the largest prison industrial complex on the planet, if you read the fine print of the 13th Amendment, and a eugenics movement in the 19th and early 20th centuries that inspired the policies of Nazi Germany. Granted, other countries in Western Europe also had most of these things, but that's not an excuse to let the US off the hook. Before we continue, I should also add that I highly doubt Misha thinks it's possible anyone should be pro-Palestine, given how, in that last video of hers I responded to, she conflated the entire Palestinian liberation movement as a whole with Hamas. And I find Misha's pro-American nationalism to be hilarious, given how as soon as the US does something she hates, she'll treat it like the world is ending. The US Supreme Court could say that trans rights are human rights tomorrow. They're obviously not going to, but hypothetically speaking, let's say they did. Misha would be among those complaining about how the US lost its way.
Imagine the students that are actually attending this university to learn, and they have to pass through encampments, tents, screaming, doing whatever on the college campus, not allowing people to get to class. Campuses are closing down. Graduation is being canceled for a lot of these students.
Why is Misha acting surprised that this protest is disrupting everything? It's a protest. They're disruptive by nature. Also, a student not being able to attend graduation because the college canceled it due to the protests, as annoying as it might be, is a minor inconvenience compared to a student in Gaza not being able to attend school at all because Israel is bombing the universities.
Of course, there was this viral clip of this woman who was being asked at one of these protests, "What are you here for? Why are you protesting?" I have no idea.
I'm not going to play the clip, but here are some reasons as to why I'm protesting the apartheid state of Israel. How about the fact that Israel fired white phosphorus into the Gaza Strip? Once again, a war crime by the Geneva Conventions. How about the fact that Israel bombs the escape route they themselves said was safe? How about the Israeli government turning off power to the Gaza Strip, thus depriving people living there of clean water and electricity? How about the constant bombing of hospitals and universities? How about the fact that the Israeli government refuses to allow Palestinians to commemorate the Nakba, the legacy of which can still be felt to this day? How about the fact that Israel's creation, in of itself, was anti-Semitic? Several countries in Central and Eastern Europe, Poland included, support Israel as an excuse to avoid confronting their own anti-Semitism.
I know sometimes people get interviewed and maybe they're just caught off guard and they get tongue-tied or something, they don't know what to say. That's not what happened here.
How do you know that wasn't what happened? For all we know, the woman in the clip you're using to paint the protesters as irrational Hamas supporters might actually have valid reasons for opposing Israel, but forgot about those reasons in the heat of the moment. Speaking of valid reasons, where was I? I was on a bit of a roll before I got distracted by something else in this video Misha said that I wanted to call out. Oh, that's right. How about the fact that Israel views themselves above the Geneva Conventions? How about the fact that Israel's genocide of the Palestinians extends beyond Gaza, as they're also committing genocide in the West Bank, an area Hamas doesn't operate in? How about the Deir Yassin massacre of 1948, where 107 Palestinian villages were massacred by Zionist militias, including Lehi, who, once again, attempted to form an alliance with Nazi Germany? How about the fact that instead of agreeing to the terms Hamas set for releasing the hostages, Israel proved it was less about Hamas and more about committing genocide by continuing to bomb Gaza, killing the hostages they wanted released? How about the fact that Israel blackmails LGBTQ plus Palestinians into becoming informants, threatening to drag them out of the closet if they refuse? Oh, and speaking of bigotry towards the LGBTQ plus community,
he's on his way to the protest, judging by the scarf, right? And then also the rainbow flag bag. Go to Gaza, my friend. Go to Gaza. To all the blue hair, they, thems, drag queens for Palestine.
No Misha Petrov video is complete without some bigotry towards the LGBTQ plus community, especially more of her non-binary erasure. Again, Israel blackmails LGBTQ plus Palestinians into becoming informants for the Israeli government out of fear of being shamed publicly by friends and family.
And you know what they say a lot of the time? You don't have to be Palestinian, you just have to be human. You know what? Yes, you have to be human to recognize that the innocent civilians who did not choose to be involved here are dying. It's tragic.
Misha, you manufactured consent for the Israeli government to bomb hospitals by claiming Hamas have their headquarters there. You have no right to talk about how tragic this is, especially when you're part of the problem.
But then it's hard to agree with you and your cause if you're out here screaming about how you're supporting Hamas and how what happened on October 7th was great, or how it didn't even happen.
Let's get this out of the way right here and right now. Hamas are a terrorist organization that don't need any support. The events of October 7th did indeed happen, and Hamas's attacks against Israeli civilians are disgusting. Now, can we discuss how the Israeli government actually allowed Hamas to form in the first place? Or how Netanyahu used Hamas to destabilize the Palestinian liberation movement? Or are you going to continue to use a few cherry-picked examples of a few protesters claiming to support Hamas to justify your strawman argument that Hamas represents the Palestinian liberation movement as a whole?
If you straight up say, I think Israel has the right to defend themselves and has the right to exist. Zionist.
You said more than that, Misha. You repeated David Ben-Zion's lie about Hamas beheading babies, something the Israeli government themselves have since debunked, and manufactured consent for the Israeli government bombing hospitals by claiming Hamas have their headquarters there.
If your protests are threatening the safety of other students, it doesn't matter about their ethnicity or their race or religion, whatever, you cannot be putting other students in danger. Vandalism should not be allowed.
Because vandalism is taking place, protests in the U.S. government supporting Israel's genocide of the Palestinians should be made illegal. Misha, Several things that are moral were illegal back in the day. In the 1800s, for instance, abolitionists would use literally any method possible, violence included, to oppose the institution of slavery, something all of us consider a moral wrong. Were 19th century abolitionists wrong in their opposition to slavery because some of them used violence to do so? I have a feeling Misha would say yes. How do I know this?
And now finally, when people are arresting these protesters, it is the funniest and most satisfying thing to watch because they are acting like children, screaming about God knows what. They have no idea why they're there, and they're being treated like children.
Because she finds police arresting people protesting Israel's genocide of the Palestinians to be a good thing. This right here invalidates any claim that Misha supports protests if they're non-violent. If police arresting protesters is a good thing, then by Misha's own logic, cops arresting, beating up, and murdering protesters during the civil rights protests and the Vietnam War protests is a good thing. Also, the cops are brought in to maintain a white supremacist status quo, not because they care about the students. If cops did care about people, there wouldn't be so many murders of unarmed black men at the hands of police.
Another thing I've noticed is that with these protests, the word anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic is being thrown around a lot, right? And unfortunately, I think it's going to become like racist or sexist or homophobic or transphobic, where people use it for things that aren't actually anti-Semitic, and it will just kind of lose its meaning when everything's being labeled that, right?
You just used cherry-picked examples of a few protesters making anti-Semitic comments to paint people protesting Israel's genocide of the Palestinians as a whole as anti-Semitic Hamas supporters.
Such humanity, such compassion. You know what they say a lot of the time? You don't have to be Palestinian, you just have to be human. You know what? Yes, you have to be human to recognize that the innocent civilians who did not choose to be involved here are dying. It's tragic. But then it's hard to agree with you and your cause if you're out here screaming about how you're supporting Hamas and how what happened on October 7th was great, or how it didn't even happen. Is that you being just a human? No, that's you being a monster. You only have to have empathy when innocent people die on your side. That's not how it works.
Has been negotiating with school leaders, but a resurfaced live stream they posted earlier this year shows James using disturbing language.
Be grateful that I'm not just going out and murdering Zionists.
And the thing is that if you straight up say, I think Israel has the right to defend themselves and has the right to exist, Zionist, and according to this guy, we're lucky he's not out there murdering Zionists. Yeah, that's a sane individual right there. That's a person who is just human.
Why are you now suddenly complaining that people use the words anti-Semitic and anti-Semitism too much?
So, of course, there are anti-Semitic protesters here, a lot of which, by the way, I bet just go to these protests, don't give a shit about Gaza, about freeing Palestine. They're there because they're anti-Semitic. Yeah, free Palestine. I hate the Jews. Free Palestine. They probably don't care.
She's not wrong, at least not fully. Some people in the Palestinian liberation movement don't actually care about Palestine and only oppose Israel because of their anti-Semitism. The contributors to the Nazi network Red Ice TV are among them. But just because there are a few people in the Palestinian liberation movement who are anti-Semitic, that doesn't mean everyone in the Palestinian liberation movement, including Jews like me who support a free Palestine no longer occupied by the US-backed Israeli government, are anti-Semitic. Before we move on, I should also dispel the notion that anti-Zionism is the same thing as anti-Semitism. It's not, as Zionists can also display anti-Semitism. Any Jew who refuses to accept that Israel, a settler colonial apartheid state, is the Jewish homeland is viewed as not a real Jew by anyone who believes Zionism is a good thing. Christian Zionists, like Christians United for Israel, are especially notorious. They don't actually care about Jews, but they want us to return to Israel so that the rapture can happen and Jesus can return.
If someone is going out and protesting the Israeli government, saying they don't agree with the decisions, the actions that the government is taking, I think that should be allowed, of course. You can protest peacefully, that's your right, and also that's not anti-Semitic if you just don't agree with what the government is doing.
The Israeli government is committing genocide, so obviously to say that I disagree with them and that they should be protested would be an understatement. Also, spoiler alert to anyone who wants to watch Misha's video, but I highly doubt Misha believes that people can protest peacefully, given how the next few clips she responds to in her video are more cherry-picked examples to make everyone protesting the genocide as anti-Semitic Hamas supporters. So because this video is getting boring, I'm gonna skip to the part where Misha stops cherry-picking examples to back up her strawman.
Should probably prioritize getting that well-rounded education, critical thinking skills that you desperately need. Again, you won't always have access to these resources.
How do you know those students aren't developing their critical thinking skills? For all we know, they might have critical thinking skills, and they're using those skills to realize that the claims they've been fed since their childhoods, such as any attack on Israel is anti-Semitic, or that the US is the greatest country on earth, or that capitalism is a good thing, are lies.
Protest all you want, but don't go out and destroy property, tearing down the flag of America, the country that gives you the right to have your protest, to have your freedom of speech.
Translation: only protest in ways that Misha approves of. If people only protest in ways that Misha approved, this would mean that any protest critical of the US, such as the civil rights movement protesting discriminatory and segregationist policies, or the Vietnam War protesters protesting US foreign policy, would be considered illegal, as both protests criticize US policies in some way, shape, or form. I think I might take a break responding to Misha Petrov for a while. This video was just as bad as the previous two videos Misha put out that I responded to. The only difference is that this time, Misha attempts to have some plausible deniability by saying you could be pro-Palestine and saying that you're not anti-Semitic by criticizing the Israeli government. Otherwise, there's nothing interesting about this video. For the most part, she's just responding to heavily cherry-picked clips, without actually providing anything useful to the table, I might add, to reinforce her strawman argument that anyone who opposes Israel is automatically supporting Hamas. This concludes today's video. As always, in the description you can find links that provide a bit more information regarding this ongoing genocide, as well as resources dedicated to helping the Palestinians. Until next time, I'm Danny Quartz, and Free Palestine.